You watch a thriller, the twist shocks everyone, but you lean back, smug, claiming you saw it coming. Did you really? Your brain might be quietly rewriting history to make you feel like a genius. Hindsight bias is the tendency to perceive past events as more predictable than they actually were. It is the "I knew it all along" effect, a subtle but powerful cognitive distortion that makes the world feel orderly and your foresight impressive. When you watch a movie and claim you predicted the killer, your memory is often fabricating that certainty. This bias goes beyond harmless ego boosts. It affects how you evaluate life choices, assign blame in courtrooms, and learn from history. The illusion is so convincing that you rarely question your own memory's reliability. Yet, understanding this quirk reveals a startling truth. Your brain is not a perfect recorder of the past, but an active storyteller, constantly editing the narrative to fit the present. This article challenges you to see through that illusion. Psychologists Baruch Fishoff and Ruth Bath formally introduced hindsight bias in the mid-1970s. Fishoff, fascinated by how people judge uncertain events, conducted a classic experiment. He presented participants with historical scenarios, like the likelihood of a US-Soviet détente, and asked them to estimate probabilities. After revealing the actual outcomes, participants recalled their original predictions as being much closer to the truth than they were. This creeping determinism showed that knowing an outcome fundamentally alters your perception of its prior likelihood. The bias was robust and replicable, appearing across different contexts. Fishoff and Bath even studied predictions about President Nixon's visits to China and the Soviet Union, finding the same pattern. Hindsight bias was not a niche phenomenon. It was a universal feature of human cognition, born from the chaos of uncertainty. Psychologists have deconstructed hindsight bias into three interconnected layers, each reinforcing the illusion. First, memory distortion. You misremember your own past predictions, recalling them as more consistent with the actual outcome. Your memory of knowing the movie twist is often a fabrication. Second, inevitability. You come to see the outcome as unavoidable, erasing the uncertainty that once existed. It had to happen that way, you think. Third, foreseeability. You believe you should have seen it coming, which can lead to self-blame or blaming others. These layers work together seamlessly. You misremember your prediction, feel the outcome was inevitable, and conclude that you or someone else should have foreseen it. The result is a distorted narrative that makes the past seem simpler and more predictable than it truly was, feeding your ego while hiding the truth. Fishoff coined the term creeping determinism to describe how outcome knowledge seeps into your memory of earlier beliefs. This is not a conscious choice, but an automatic cognitive adjustment. In one experiment, even when participants were explicitly warned about hindsight bias and instructed to avoid it, they still showed the effect. The bias operates below conscious control, making it a particularly stubborn distortion. You cannot simply unknow an outcome, so your brain reconstructs the past to accommodate the present. This process is so automatic that you rarely notice it happening. The result is a false sense of certainty about past events, which can lead to overconfidence in your own judgment. Understanding the stubbornness of creeping determinism is the first step toward recognizing when your memory is playing tricks on you. A prominent theory explaining hindsight bias is the anchoring and adjustment model. When you make a judgment after knowing the outcome, you anchor on that outcome and then try to adjust your perception of your prior prediction. However, the adjustment is typically insufficient. You cannot fully ignore what you now know, so your reconstructed prediction remains skewed toward the actual result. This model explains why even experts fall prey to hindsight bias. Doctors, for example, may believe a diagnosis was obvious after the fact, leading to unfair self-criticism or blame of colleagues. The anchoring effect is powerful because it taps into your brain's natural tendency to seek coherence. Once you know the ending, every clue seems to point there, creating a false narrative of inevitability. Recognizing this trap helps you question your own confidence in past judgments. Hindsight bias has profound real-world consequences, especially in legal and historical contexts. In courtrooms, jurors may judge a defendant's actions as negligent because they already know the outcome, overlooking the uncertainty that existed at the time. This bias can lead to unfair verdicts and excessive blame. Similarly, in history, we often view past decisions as obviously wrong, forgetting the limited information available then. This distorts our ability to learn from the past. For instance, after a financial crisis, experts claim they saw it coming, but their predictions before the event were far less certain. This false hindsight prevents genuine learning because it oversimplifies complex events. By understanding hindsight bias, you can approach past decisions with more humility and accuracy, recognizing that what seems obvious now was often unclear before. While hindsight bias is automatic, you can reduce its influence with deliberate strategies. One effective method is to consider the opposite. Before learning an outcome, write down your predictions and reasoning. Afterward, compare them honestly. This forces you to confront your actual uncertainty. Another technique is to ask yourself what alternative outcomes could have occurred, imagining different scenarios. This breaks the illusion of inevitability. Keeping a decision journal also helps, as it records your thoughts before outcomes are known. Over time, this practice trains your brain to recognize the bias in action. Finally, cultivate intellectual humility. Accept that the past was uncertain and that your memory is fallible. By doing so, you can make better decisions in the present and avoid the trap of overconfidence. Your memory is a storyteller, but you can learn to fact-check its tales. If you found this exploration of your own mind valuable, remember, the past is never as clear as it seems. Stay curious and question your certainties.